Dodgers pitcher Julio Urias did not have a good day in Baltimore yesterday. Urias gave up a career-high 8 runs in 5 innings. Before the game, LSU women's basketball star Angel Reese, a Baltimore native, threw out the first pitch. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
2 years ago, on Juneteenth 2021, KBLA Talk 1580 launched with a promise to give disenfranchised fellow citizens a voice in current political, economic, social, and cultural issues with an empowering, sustainable, and restorative language.
Everybody's gotta live the life under the sun, under the sun, under the sun, under the sun.
As we enter our 3rd year, we are delighted that KBLA Talk 1580 consistently emerges as the talk station of choice for African American listeners. In a vigorous public opinion research study, the 2023 African American Media Issue Survey finds that for the 2nd consecutive year, KBLA Talk 1580 remains the most trusted, credible, and reliable media source in Southern California for African Americans and beyond. Furthermore, 80% of those surveyed agree that outlets like KBLA Talk 1580 provide honest and authentic content about the issues most important to the Black community directly from Black journalists who understand the issues that need to be addressed. At KBLA Talk 1580, we remain committed to curating conversations that matter to you. Thank you for your continued support. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. The station that sounds like the city looks. The city looks.
Something for my god, Santi Elijah, and a little girl named Corinne. Some say the blacker the better, the sweeter the juice. I say the darker the flesh, and the deeper the roots. I give a holler to my sisters on welfare, Tupac kids, if don't nobody else care. And I know they like to beat you down a lot. When you come around the block, brothers clown a lot. But please don't cry, dry your eyes, never let up. Forgive, but don't forget, girl, keep your head up. And when he tells you you ain't nothing, don't believe him. And if you can't learn to love you, you should leave him. Cause sister, you don't need him. And I ain't trying to gas you up, I just call him how I see. You know what makes me unhappy? That when brothers make babies and leave a young mother to be a pastor. And since we all came from a woman, got our name from a woman, and I came from a woman. I wonder why we take from our women, why we rape our women, do we hate our women?
You're listening to Tavis Smiley. I'm glad to have you with us in this hour. Should you miss any part of today's program or want to catch up on previous shows, check out the Tavis Smiley podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and listen at your leisure. But as I said, I'm glad to have you with us in this hour. And in this hour, whenever we hear the name Shakur, it is undoubtedly familiar to many of us due to figures like Assata Shakur, the renowned author and thinker who spent more than 3 decades in exile, or the late influential and iconic rapper Tupac Shakur, who you're listening to right about now. But their story is much more extensive, encompassing a lineage of persistent fighters who've left a lasting mark on the struggle for racial justice in the United States. In his new book, An Amerikan Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created, author Santi Elijah Holley goes beyond the well-known figures of Assata and Tupac Shakur and reveals the greater narrative of the Shakur family tree, which has roots that reach deep into the history of the underground fight for freedom. I am pleased to welcome Santi Elijah Holley to Tavis Smiley. Brother Santi, how are you, sir?
I'm doing good, man. Doing good. Trying to stay cool in this heat.
Yeah, it's impacting and affecting all of us. We had a conversation recently on this program with Dr. Mustafa Santiago Ali about climate change and this heat and the way that this weathering, this weathering impact is causing black folk to age faster. It's strange. No, it's strange. All of the tentacles that offshoot climate change and global warming, and this is real stuff. I'm not making this up. There is a condition known as weathering, and as a result of that, and all the exposure we have to heat and other pollutants, black people, the data and the evidence and the science suggests to us, are now aging faster than other people. We laugh all the time and say black don't crack. Well, black don't crack, but we are in fact aging faster than others because of our exposure to so many pollutants and heat, etc. So I hear you. You're trying to survive it. I'm trying to survive it. We all are. But there's this heat, this extended heat is no joke, and there are always consequences for people of color. I digress on that point. Glad to have you in for the hour. Glad we have the hour to unpack your new book, An American Family, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. Before I get into the book, the first thing I want to ask you, since this is radio and people cannot see the cover of the book, it's called, once again, An American Family, but I wonder if you might share with the audience how and why you spell the word American in the way that you do.
Yeah, thanks for asking that. That's a question I've been asked, and it was intentional. I mean, the use of the K in America has been used by anti-racist, anti-imperialist organizers, activists, radicals since at least the 70s to sort of imply in a sort of satirical way this country's racist treatment and the sort of the familiar treatment that, the Klan, the Ku Klux Klan employs. And so it's sort of connecting this country's history with sort of Klan behavior and sort of pointing out the fact that this country is connected to the Klan very much. And I wanted to also call it An American Family because I believe that the Shakurs and what they represented and the work that they did is part of this tradition of anti-racist, anti-imperial, work. But they are very much a product of this country, just as much as this country is a product of dissidents and radicals, just like the Shakurs and people that they worked with.
Yep. So if you're looking for the book, it's called An American Family, spelled Amerikan, An American Family, Kan, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. So that's why you named the book that An American Family, and that's why you spell American in the way that you do. You've answered those questions. Let me ask now, before again I get straight way into the text, what pulled at you? Why write this particular text? Why do the research on this subject matter?
For me, it started as a personal interest. I mean, and just a curiosity, because I've been a fan of Tupac, of course, going way back to when he was still alive, but I didn't really listen to his lyrics or what he was saying in his interviews also, and until I got a little bit older and I started working as a journalist in putting together, connecting art and culture to activism and to protest, and looking deeper into who was saying these things back in the day. And so I was really looking at Tupac's lyrics and interviews more deeply. And then for me, it just, I wanted to go deeper. And how did he learn all this? How did he, who was his inspiration? Who taught him all this stuff, all this history? And I learned about his mother, Afeni, who was a Black Panther in the 60s and 70s. I learned about his stepfather, Matulu, who's also a radical organizer and leader. And I was just like, why hasn't this been told in full? I was coming up against, walls when I was trying to learn about this history and this family. I was just like, no one's really told this story before in its complete history. And then so it started just as a personal interest for me in wanting to learn this history. And then I was just like, I know other folks want to know this story too. I mean, whenever I talk about Matulu and Afeni and Tupac, people just want to hear more about them. And they just say, I didn't know this history. I didn't know this and that. So I started learning for myself. And then I was just like, I got to tell the story because I know that this history is important, not just the family, but also just the history of what they were up against and the sort of various state repressive forces that they were, working against. And that really came down hard on them. It's just important history to know, whether or not you care about the Shakurs or not. I mean, this is an important history to know. So I wanted just to, get everything out there that I learned and share that with folks. Now
you know the name of the book and why it is so named and why it's spelled the way it is. It's called An American Family, Amerikan, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. You know why he wrote the book, and you know who wrote the book. Santi Elijah Holley. More with him when we come forward, and we'll get straight away into this book on Tavis Smiley.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Good thing we've got 3 hours.
More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
You're listening to K-Drip, where we play all the best classic water-wasting hits like Sprinklers in the Rain and Leaky Faucets. They're tunes from another time because now that we face a hotter, drier future, every drop counts. Despite an extremely wet winter, keep using less water, fixing leaks, and reusing indoor water for your garden. Visit SaveOurWater.com for more ways to conserve. Up next, brushing your teeth with the water on.
K-Drip.
Get in zone, AutoZone. Welcome to AutoZone. What are you working on today?
I'm looking for fuel injector cleaner.
Right now, buy a bottle of Chevron Techron Complete Fuel System Cleaner and get one free. Only at AutoZone.
Will it also help with my mileage?
Get everything you need to restore your performance in MPGs.
Wait, is it good for trucks too?
Whatever vehicle you have, you can find the right products and parts at AutoZone. AutoZone. Restrictions apply.
Girl, I have a secret. When I get stressed out, I get sweaty. That's why I use Secret Clinical Antiperspirant. It's like my own secret weapon. For 72 hours, I get Secret's strongest protection against sweat caused by stress, heat, and activity, because you know how crazy life can get. Plus, it's made with advanced odor fighters that don't just cover up smelliness. They help prevent it from happening in the first place. Believe me, if I weren't wearing Secret, I'd be a hot, smelly mess. Thankfully, Secret works.
Do you struggle with occasional nerve aches in your hands or feet? Try Nervive Nerve Relief from the world's #1 nerve care company. Nervive tablets contain alpha-lipoic acid to relieve nerve aches, weakness, and discomfort, plus B-complex vitamins to support healthy nerve function as you age. Live life with less nerve discomfort with Nervive Nerve Relief. Learn more at nervivehealth.com. And try Nervive Pain Relieving Cream to block nerve pain signals at the source. Use as directed.
When I can't sleep, my mind just races. I think about work, the kids, but I don't think about taking melatonin because I'm afraid I'll feel groggy in the morning.
ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies has an optimal dose of melatonin for no next-day grogginess, so you can fall asleep naturally and wake up feeling refreshed. ZzzQuil Pure Z's Gummies for better sleep like never before. And try Pure Z Sleep plus next-day energy with melatonin plus extended-release B vitamins.
Interrogating your assumptions and expanding your inventory of ideas. Let's get back to Tavis Smiley on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Tavis Smiley. Our guest in this hour is Santi Elijah Holley, author of the new book, An Amerikan Family, the Shakurs and the nation they created. Just getting started really in this conversation. Glad to have him for the rest of this hour. So you've told me why you wanted to delve more deeply into this family. And their impact on racial justice in this country. Let me start with this. You mentioned that you obviously were aware of Tupac when you were younger, but it wasn't until you got older that you really started to wrestle with his corpus, with his body of work, with his lyricism. When you jumped into that, what did you discover? What did you see when you got into his writings?
Yeah, I saw just how deep he really was, how deep of a thinker he was. You know, he was talking about police brutality. He was talking about income inequality. He was talking about, you know, just poverty in the black community. He was talking about things that a lot of rappers, you know, let alone entertainers, were in, you know, everything he was doing, acting. People with that kind of platform really weren't using it in a way that he was. You know, whether his lyrics or his interviews, he was speaking out to the sort of social ills that were facing folks in that day, you know, in the 90s, mid-90s, early to mid-90s. And he was doing so in a way that other folks, you know, there's other rappers who were talking about political issues. I mean, there's Public Enemy, there's Paris, you know, but he was doing it in a way that really meant to speak to folks where they were at. He wasn't trying to preach at anybody, you know what I'm saying? Like, he was really trying to reach young black folks where they were. You know, that's why he put on, you know, bangers on his albums too, just like club hits. At the same time, he'd have these really deep introspective or political songs because he wanted to sort of connect with everybody. So that's what he was doing, you know, and he really did. That's why I think we're talking about him, you know, so many years after he passed. It's because he was speaking on a higher level than a lot of folks were at that time.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how and why in the text you link his artistic genius to the struggle for racial justice and whatever his impact is or was on that as you see it.
I think he made a lot of people think, you know, differently about what was going on in that time. I mean, this was a time when, you know, young black men were being incarcerated at, you know, it just higher rates. I mean, there's different. It was just like what was going on at the time. It was just really a desperate moment in the community, and he was really calling out. Because he had lived through it. I mean, he lived through poverty. He lived through repression because, you know, he grew up in a family that was pursued by, you know, federal and state agents and police officers. So, like, he had a personal experience to that. So he was just, you know, speaking his truth and connecting to things like, he was and he was talking to things that people really weren't even really thinking about, or at least not talking about publicly. I mean, like Brenda's Got a Baby, one of his, earliest singles, talks about, a young mother, just a young girl who becomes pregnant and doesn't know what to do and doesn't have support from her family, and just the desperation that she felt. I mean, nobody was talking about that, So like, and that's because that's who he saw around him. And he just said, someone's got to say this. And that's the way he was raised. That's the way his mother raised him, was to speak out when he sees something, that's wrong. And so he had this platform as a rapper, as a, popular entertainer. So he had that platform. So he said, well, this is what I do. This is how I was raised. So this is what I'm going to do.
We are all the sum total of our life's experiences, which is just another way of saying that whatever our work and witness is in the world, that is oftentimes informed by our adolescence, informed by the ways in which we were shaped and formed, if I can put it that way. So for me, it's impossible, and you're the author here, but it seems impossible to disconnect Tupac's lyricism, his struggle for racial justice as he saw it, from his early beginnings, from again the ways in which he was shaped and formed as a child with his mother Afeni. Link those two things for me. What we ultimately got from his artistic genius to what he was enduring early on in his life.
Yeah, I mean, so he was, in his childhood when he was raised in the movement. I'm talking about the Black Liberation Movement, Black Panthers, Black Liberation Army, Republic of New Africa. He was raised by all these veterans, people who had survived, everything that had happened in the 60s and 70s. He came up in that. That's who surrounded him. That's who helped, nurture him. And so he grew up with that love and support, but also that pressure and, responsibility that he felt. I mean, his mother, Afeni, was a highly respected activist in the Black Panther Party. And she'd raised him, she raised her son, Tupac, to carry on that tradition, to carry on the movement, to pick up where they had fell off. He was raised to sort of, take the mantle and keep forward. So he had that pressure, all around him, and he did the best he could. Like early on, before he really blew up, he was the chairman of the New African Panthers, and a youth organization, and he was writing raps that were just talking about the Panthers and history, and you got to know your history and all this. And he was trying to organize the new Black Panthers and organize his friends to speak out against things that they saw in their community. So he had all that with him his whole life, and he had that struggle of a little bit of back and forth of like he wanted to, once he got a little bit of attention, a little bit of fame, it was like, well, how do I reconcile how I was raised, what I'm saying, like to having money, because he also, he grew up impoverished and homeless at times and crashing on friends' couches and not having anything to eat. And now he's got fame and riches and, cameras on him. So he really struggled early on to sort of stick to who he was and how he was raised, but also, wanting to be popular, wanting to be successful. So he always had that sort of, push and pull within him throughout his whole career.
In case you've just tuned in, we're talking to Santi Elijah Holley, the author of a new book called An Amerikan Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created. He goes beyond the well-known figures Tupac and Assata Shakur, who we'll discuss in just a moment, and reveals the greater narrative of the Shakur family tree, which has roots that reach deep into the history of the underground fight for freedom. So we've talked a bit about Tupac. We'll get back to that. But now I want to pivot to Assata Shakur. And then we'll weave these two things together as we move through this hour. So that's a bit about Tupac, but you're also researching the work and witness of the life and legacy, at times controversial, obviously, of Assata Shakur. I had the chance to meet Assata Shakur many years ago in Cuba, where she, of course, had been in exile for many, many years. This was some years ago. I was in Cuba to interview Fidel Castro. And while on that trip, I had a chance to sit with her and meet with her in the lobby of my hotel, and just a fascinating conversation some years ago with Assata Shakur. Here you are, though, researching her backstory for this text about the Shakurs. So talk to me about Assata Shakur.
Well, I mean, I gotta say, I envy you for having that opportunity to meet Sister Assata in person and speak with her. I unfortunately did not. I think, in recent years, as the bounty on her has gone up to $2 million, I think she has sort of retreated a little deeper and does not make herself readily available, which is understandable, especially these days. A lot of crazy folks out there. So I just didn't even. That's not something I was able to do. But I did speak with many people who had worked directly with her, who knew her, who worked with her. And so I was able to sort of get a picture of what she meant, what she meant to folks, what she did, what she accomplished, and also just who she was beyond the mythology that has built up around her. After all these years, there's this mythology around Assata that I think sometimes doesn't really get at the real person who she was, the real human that she was, the contradictions, the challenges she faced, and some of the acts that she was accused of. I feel like we don't really look at her whole life. We look at her book, which was very influential and still today is an important text. But we have to understand who she was, when she wrote that book and before she wrote that book, and the things that she really, things that she faced in her life, and how she became Assata Shakur.
Let me jump in right quick, because again, you know this story well, and oftentimes in conversations with authors, because they know this, they know the subject matter so well, they are reticent to really to delve into it. But the rest of us don't know it the way you know it. So for those, because you're talking in broad strokes here, for those who don't know the backstory of Assata Shakur that you're referencing, may have never heard the name Assata Shakur. They certainly know Tupac Shakur, but may not know Assata Shakur. Take some time here, take a few minutes, and unpack who Assata Shakur, what that backstory is all about.
Yeah, well, first I feel like it's important to say, even just to point out, the name Shakur does not necessarily represent, in this case with the Shakur family, it doesn't necessarily mean blood relative. Assata Shakur is not a blood relative to Tupac or Afeni or Mutulu, but they're a family by choice. They've decided to take that name on and to join the family in solidarity. So Assata Shakur, wasn't born Assata Shakur. She changed her name like many folks did later on when they joined the struggle. And she was an early Black Panther. I mean, she was a young college student who joined the New York branch, the Harlem branch, the New York Black Panther Party. Got disillusioned pretty early on just from a lot of infighting, a lot of the misogyny that was happening at the time. And then she joined up with the group, a more underground group at the time that sprung up called the Black Liberation Army, which was mostly defectors from the Black Panther Party, people who wanted to go underground. So she joined up with them and then embarked on tactics and actions that caused her to go underground and sort of disappear from the grid. And eventually, and then she was in 73, she was arrested in a shootout with New Jersey state troopers, and that followed by years and years of trials for various things that she was accused of, bank robberies, shooting police officers, all of which she was acquitted of, or cases were dropped, charges were dropped. But then she was accused of shooting a New Jersey state trooper and murdering him. And so she was put away, she was locked up for, sentenced to life. And she was freed from prison, by a team of, just a team of her comrades. And now she's living in Cuban exile. And then when she was in exile, she wrote her autobiography, which is, a very seminal, important text about her story, about her history, about who she was. Yeah, so that's a little bit of background.
No, I asked you to share some of that background again for those who may not know the story of Assata Shakur, as well as they know the story of Tupac Shakur, and it raises this fundamental question: how someone with that backstory could leave, as you have argued in your text, or as you argue in the book, a lasting mark on the struggle for racial justice in this country. There are those listening right now who may say, okay, so she's accused of killing a cop. She's been in exile in Cuba for years. You're connecting these Shakurs, Tupac and Assata, in this text and arguing that they have both left a lasting mark on the struggle for racial justice. How does one with that backstory do that?
It's really, it's the words and the sentiments that they expressed sometimes don't connect with some of the things that they were accused of. I mean, some of the things that their actions that they were accused of, oftentimes I would say they're pretty heinous. Other folks could justify it, and I think sometimes they justify what they were accused of. It's like as far as robbing banks, shooting police officers, these things. Yeah, I'm not personally, I will not advocate those things or justify those things, but folks in the struggle, the movement at the time said this is all part of, we are engaged in war with the U.S. government, and this is just part of our revolutionary tactics that are happening, all over the world. But now, what their influence is today, especially with folks like Assata and Matulu and them, it's really what their words, like what their heart was so dedicated to the struggle and to liberation of Black folks in America. That's where they gave their lives to that. They gave everything. They sacrificed so much, and a lot of things that they did, I feel like were sort of done with the pure intentions, but then it kind of got out of hand. You know what I'm saying? Like after a while, it just kind of ran wild and just got out of their hands and out of control. But what their legacy is today is just their words, their intention, their love for the people. I mean, that comes across, when you read Assata's book, you see, she really is sincere in her love for the people. And, whatever she did in the past, I don't, if I could talk to her, I'd want to know, if she regrets any of it, if she wish she had done things differently. But I wouldn't question her intentions. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like that's really what comes through.
Somebody asked me some years ago in a conversation, I don't even know how we got into this question. It was a bit morbid to ask me this, but it was a powerful question, and it made me think on the spot. And I was asked how I would want to be remembered, how I'd want my work and witness to be regarded. And I had to pause for a second because at the time, and even for that matter now, I'm hoping not to die anytime soon, but who knows? That's not in my control. But I was asked this question, and I thought about it for a second, Santi, and my response was the following. If the only thing they say about me when my time is up is that he loved his people, that'd be enough for me. Mm-hmm. That whatever else you say about Tavis Smiley, what is irrefutable, what is incontrovertible, is that he unapologetically loved his people. Here you come now talking about the love that these Shakurs, the two most famous ones, Tupac and Assata, the love they have had for their people. And when we come forward, I want to address that issue. Let you address it, the love they've had for their people. For over 50 years now, the Shakurs have inspired generations of activists, scholars, and music fans. Most of us are familiar only with Assata Shakur, the popular author and thinker living for decades now in Cuban exile, or the late iconic rapper Tupac. But the branches of the Shakur family tree extend widely. We'll talk more about those branches when we come forward with Santi Elijah Holley in his new book, An Amerikan Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created, on Tavis Smiley.
The station you turn to when you've had it up to gear with cultural incompetence. KBLA Talk 1580.
Glad you could join us, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Here's the latest from the Black Information Network. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is defending controversial comments he made suggesting Chinese and Jewish people are less susceptible to COVID-19. Kennedy argued he's being smeared through misrepresentations and distortions about what he said, and there's no evidence he's anti-Semitic, as members of his own party have claimed. In Colorado Springs African-American Mayor Yemi Mobolade is working to finish the previous administration's plan for the city.
First one is to build support within the various levels of government. That's on the federal level, the state level, and the local level.
Through his term, Mobolade also wants to launch a homelessness and mental health summit to get everyone in Colorado Springs housed. And that's the latest. I'm Mike Moore from your 24/7 news source, the Black Information Network and BINnews.com.
West Covina on the eastbound side of the 10 at Pacific West Covina Parkway. A crash with the right lane blocked right around Puente Avenue, the slow speeds. Baldwin Park on the 10 west at Francisquita La Puente. The left lane blocked with a collision. Loaded up here from Vincent Glendora. Pasadena on the 134 east at San Rafael. The right lane is blocked with a crash. As you approach the 2 is where things slow down. And the Sepulveda Pass, a record of an ongoing investigation. 405 north at Ventura Boulevard. 2 of the right lanes are blocked. The off-ramp shut down. Stop and go from Getty.
Now your ideas don't have to wait. Dell Technologies and Intel are pushing what technology can do. so great ideas can happen right now. Find out how to bring your ideas to life at Dell.com. Welcome to Now.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
More health issues for first-year Colorado football coach Deion Sanders. Deion will have surgery this morning to remove blood clots in his right leg. He will miss the Pac-12 Conference Media Day Friday in Las Vegas. Deion had surgery on June 22nd to remove blood clots in his left leg. Deion posted on Instagram yesterday that he will be ready to coach his new team when preseason camp starts next month. The New York Jets are the first NFL team to open training camp. They hit the field yesterday in Florham Park, New Jersey. The Chargers and Rams open up camp on Tuesday. Dodgers pitcher Julio Urias did not have a good day in Baltimore yesterday. Urias gave up a career-high 8 runs in 5 innings. Before the game, LSU women's basketball star Angel Reese, a Baltimore native, threw out the first pitch. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Hey, Dad, how do airplanes fly? What's in this box? Is this tree good for climbing? How are babies made? What does this thing do?
Kids are curious about everything, including guns. Talking to them about gun safety in your home is a good first step, but you can do more. Always keep your guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. Safe gun storage saves lives. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. That's endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by End Family Fire, Brady, and the Ad Council.
At Grainger, we're for the ones who pay attention to every little detail. The ones who fuss, tinker, and sweat the small stuff. Because you know the tiniest thing can make the biggest difference when it comes to keeping business moving. We get it. We're the same way. Offering access to product experts to help you quickly and easily find what you need. So whatever your industry, you know you're always getting professional-grade products. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Do you have heart failure and often hear,
"Those stomach issues ruined your birthday"?
You're too tired to play catch, Grandpa.
Sweetie, you haven't touched your tools since the carpal tunnel syndrome diagnosis.
If these seemingly unrelated symptoms sound familiar, talk to your cardiologist. Ask about transthyretin amyloid cardiomyopathy, or ATTR-CM, a rare and underdiagnosed disease that gets worse over time. Learn more at connecttoyourheart.com. That's connecttoyourheart.com. Sponsored by Pfizer.
Sometimes we lose, sometimes we win. Sometimes we try to fit it all in. Sometimes we don't know what's in store. Sometimes we find what we're looking for. Sometimes we're rolling easy and free. Sometimes 1 and 1 makes 3. So much to love along this ride. That's why Nationwide is on your side.
Nationwide Mutual Insurance Company and Affiliates, Columbus, Ohio.
Are you working way too hard for way too little? There's never been a better time to consider a career in IT. You could enjoy a recession-resistant career in a rewarding field with plenty of growth opportunities and often flexible work environments. Go to mycomputercareer.edu and take the free career evaluation. You can start your new career in months, not years. Take classes online or on campus, and financial aid is available to qualified students, including the GI Bill. Now's the time. Go to mycomputercareer.edu.
You know that Big Bargain detergent jug is 85% water, right?
85% water? I thought I was getting a better deal because it's so big.
If you want a better clean, Tide Pods are only 12% water. The rest is pure, concentrated cleaning ingredients.
Ooh, pass me the intercom thingy.
Attention shoppers. If you want a real deal, try Tide Pods.
Don't pay for water. Pay for clean. If it's got to be clean, it's got to be Tide Pods.
Water content based on the leading bargain liquid detergent.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, where everybody is somebody and nobody is a stranger. You belong here.
You're listening to Tavis Smiley, and I'm glad about it. Our guest in this hour is the author, Santi Elijah Holley. His new book is called An Amerikan Family, spelled Amerikan, An Amerikan Family, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. They have been celebrated, glorified, and mythologized. They've been hailed as heroes, liberators, and freedom fighters. They've been condemned, pursued, imprisoned, exiled, and killed. But the true story, the complete story of the Shakur family, one of the most famous names in contemporary Black American history, has never been told until now. And we thank Santi Elijah Holley for the research and the work that goes into writing I think, what will be a classic text like this one, An American Family, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. Before I jump right back into our conversation, as I promised moments ago, about the love that these Shakurs have had for their people. Just this past Monday, in fact, Santi, as you know, Las Vegas police searched a home in Sin City. An investigation of Tupac Shakur's murder nearly 3 decades after his death. This story just does not end. It does not close. What do you make of the news that broke earlier this week? That again, 3 decades later, they were searching a home in Las Vegas in connection to the murder of Tupac Shakur.
Yeah, I gotta say, Tavis, when I first heard the news, I thought it was a joke. I thought it was just something that somebody made up. And, when it started to come out that it actually was happening, there's still not that much information about it. So I'm still kind of waiting, but I'm skeptically waiting to see what happens. I don't see how, after all this time, they have something that they can work with, because they've had this information for, like you said, for 3 decades. They've had this information. They know they have suspects, or they've had leads, but they've never really moved on any of that. So I'm suspicious. Why now? We'll see what they come up with. But people who know, who follow the story, who follow Tupac and his murder. We all have we all pretty much know who was there, who was present. We also know, as Las Vegas on this, on the Strip, there's hundreds of people around. They talk about how folks are not cooperating with the police. I get that, but there's hundreds of folks around. There's cameras. There's ways to do an investigation. I'm not a detective, but I'm saying, like, I feel like it's not that difficult, to follow up on. You have people talking about, I was in the car with the shooter. Okay. So we'll see what happens with this new search warrant and who they got and who they're, if anything comes of it, or if they're just taking advantage of this moment where Tupac is, back in the news again.
I don't want to get too far afield from your text, but let me just ask, given all that you just said now, why do you think this murder, all these years later, has not been solved?
I can only speculate on this, really. My hunch, which is just, it's just my idea, is that, Tupac was a well-known critic of the police department. From coast to coast. He had an ongoing, throughout his career, throughout his life, throughout his family's life, his whole history of his family, had a feud with the police. They openly spoke out against them. In his lyrics, he openly spoke out against the police and police harassment and police brutality. He was always clashing with police departments, all over different cities all over. And I feel like, when he died, I just don't think that it was the top priority. I don't think it was the top priority to solve his murder. I think they probably just looked at some gang stuff, and they're probably just like, how much time, how many resources do we need to put into this? I think they just kind of just did the bare minimum. And that's just my opinion.
Yep. Well, as you well know, law enforcement has said repeatedly that they believe this murder has not been solved because there are too many people that will not cooperate. You took that.
Yeah, I've heard. I've heard that, but I don't believe it.
Yep.
I gotta say, I don't believe it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. As I said, I don't want to get too far afield from your text, An American Family, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. But it's hard to talk about Tupac with not covering some of that ground, particularly given that there was a search of a home literally days ago, earlier this week, in the murder of Tupac Shakur some 3 decades later. Now, to the point that I was pressing my way toward moments ago, which is really the point that you made about the love that these Shakurs, heroes, liberators, freedom fighters, imprisoned, exiled, and killed though they may be, they have had a profound love for their people. I said minutes ago that if the only thing said about me when my time comes is that I love my people, that'd be enough. I could be okay with that. But talk to me, as you put it, about the love that they have had for their people.
Yeah, what they did, they showed their love not just by words, but by deeds, by actions. And they for a couple examples. Mutulu Shakur, the late, who just passed away July 7th, just recently. He, as a young man, he learned acupuncture because he wanted to provide holistic treatment to his people, to his community, who were suffering from, drug addiction, from heroin addiction in the Bronx. And he found a different way that he could provide health care to people for free often. Sometimes he wouldn't charge nothing. Sometimes he just charged a few dollars here and there, just whatever people could give. That is showing his love for the community, saying, how can we help people who are literally dying on the streets? What can I do? How can I use myself, in service to these folks, to my people? So that is him showing his love, through his whole life. And then when he was incarcerated, when he was caught after serious crimes, and then he was incarcerated, and even behind the wall, he was a mentor to other inmates. He just tried to put them on the right path, just provided teaching and just knowledge to them. And so he just did what he could, even when he was locked up. He's continued to be a mentor to young folks, who looked up to him, and knew his history. And then so there's Afeni Shakur, Tupac's mother, who, showed her love to the community by volunteering her time to organize rent strikes for exploitative landlords. When they're taking advantage of their tenants, she would go around and organize and to teach them how to, open up an escrow account, withhold their rent. She provided legal aid to people who, couldn't afford lawyers. So she just, that's what this family did. That's what everybody in this family did. It was just they used themselves as a way to help folks who were in need, who couldn't afford it, who didn't even know how to, go about getting basic services for themselves. These folks, often taught themselves, things like Afeni taught herself the law. Matu taught himself acupuncture. Assata learned, she became a nurse, and she learned how to, help people who were, who needed care right then and there, who were just sort of like, you couldn't, walk into a hospital and get health care. But they, so these folks they just saw what their immediate needs in the community, and they addressed it, and that's how they show their love. And that's how, and they did that from the beginning, and they still do that today.
The book is called An American Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created. It is a New York Times editor's pick. That's high cotton, as we say around here. It's a New York Times editor's pick. The LA Times says it is magnificent, a uniquely intimate history of Black liberation. When we come forward with the author of that book, Santi Elijah Holley, I want to talk about Black liberation and the impact that these Shakurs have had on that specifically. He also argues in the book, which is the purpose of the book, I think, that the Shakurs, the story of the Shakurs is the story of America. I can see that on the one hand. I could challenge that on the other hand. I'll see which one I do, which one I engage when we come forward. But I take his point. I think that the story of the Shakurs is the story of America. But when the New York Times, the LA Times, and everybody else says this is a book you might want to consider reading, perhaps you should. Once again, it's called An American Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created. I also want to ask Santi when we come forward, how the iconography of the Shakur family, how the iconography of this family has gotten in the way of our seeing them for who they truly are. A great deal more to talk about when we come forward with Santi Elijah Holley on Tavis Smiley.
Be sure to like and follow Tavis Smiley at The Real Tavis Smiley and get Twitter updates at Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues when we come forward.
Mom's early Alzheimer's diagnosis was hard to take.
And when I left the oven on, we decided together that it was time to see a doctor and make a plan.
Early detection gave us more time to seek out information and support as a family.
If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. For more information, visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
Hollywood Walk of Fame stars in 2024. Stay tuned to find out who's in next year's class. I'm Aisha Cairo with your K-Black Minute News. A new group of 31 entertainment professionals across film, television, radio, recording, and sports entertainment will have their names etched into Hollywood's history in 2024. One of the most celebrated names on the list was the beloved Chadwick Boseman. Others for the class of 2024 in Hollywood Walk of Fame was this year's Oscar winner Michelle Yeoh in the motion picture category. Other notable names include Chris Pine, Gwen Stefani, Andre, Dr. Dre, Young, Otis Redding, Christina Ricci, Brandy Norwood, Harry Washington, and more. The dates for the star ceremonies have not yet been scheduled. To find out all 31 inductees, visit youtube.com/Walk of Fame.
The $5 cravings box is back at Taco Bell, and it's the real thing. We're talking a chalupa supreme, a cheesy, beefy 5-layer burrito, a crunchy taco, cinnamon twist, and a medium drink, all for just $5. That's a lot of food for not a lot of dollars. In other words, a wise business deal, like greeting clients with a firm handshake and a delicious 3-course meal. That's only $5. Order your $5 cravings box on the Taco Bell app today. At limited participating U.S. Taco Bell locations for a limited time only while supplies last. Contact local store for price and participation which vary. Drinks exclude freezes. Price excludes tax.
Whether you own a local business or a global one, you know that these days, generating growth is a challenge. By teaming with Bank of America, you'll not just stay ahead of the curve, you'll move it. With access to experts, award-winning insights, and business solutions so powerful, you'll make every move matter, locally and globally. Visit bankofamerica.com/banking for business to learn more. What would you like the power to do? Copyright 2023 Bank of America, N.A.
I'm James Alexander, a proud member of AARP. 1967, I was 17. That spring, my friends, the Barcades, and I made Soulfinger. It was a hit. Number 3 on the charts. That summer, we became the great Otis Redding's band. First gig, the famed Apollo. That fall, we toured. That winter found me in a morgue identifying the bodies of my bandmates and Otis Redding. My music and their memories bring me joy. The Barcades, forever.
What would you call a joy that is as solemn as it is sweet and knows no bounds? A joy that's beautifully rooted in soul and resilience. This is Black Joy, a joy that reflects pride and honor despite every challenge. AARP believes the power of Black joy is limitless, and we celebrate this joy supreme. Join us in celebrating Black joy at aarp.org/blackcommunity.
Broadcasting live from Leimert Park, USA. Welcome back to your home for unapologetically progressive radio, KBLA Talk 1580.
Santi Elijah Holley, what would you say about the impact of the Shakurs on the history of Black liberation in this country?
You know, I think what they showed, what they proved is that, you know, organization, just unity, just collective work, that can accomplish so much. I mean, just community work, you know, you got to focus on your community first and foremost, organize people around you. I think that we see that today with people who are doing community-based actions, who are doing things that, you know, might not necessarily get the fanfare of larger national organizations, but who are just doing the work that needs to be done, you know, the urgent work that needs to be done, you know, to challenge the status quo, to challenge white supremacy. I mean, there's things that you can do just, you know, in your own community. And I think that's what the Shakurs are doing. They saw their urgent needs, their immediate needs, and they did what needed to be done. I think today, you know, younger organizers, younger people, not just activists, but, you know, artists, musicians who are using their voice and using their platform to address these urgent needs. You know, that's what they've always done, the Shakurs, you know, just saying, this is what I can do. This is within, you know, what I can accomplish. And so I'm going to just address that, you know, without worrying about dismantling the whole system. Let's just focus on what can we do, like what can people, you know, do and organize today and here and now to help, you know, what we're going through.
Are there ways in which, and I think you take my point here, the point of my question at least, are there ways in which their iconography has gotten in the way of seeing whatever it is that you want us to see?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think a lot of times, and especially with folks like Tupac and Assata, you know, they become lionized idolized to a point where we sort of lose sight of their humanity and their struggles and their mistakes and their flaws and shortcomings. And really, that's where we can learn the most. You know what I'm saying? Like, that's where we learn the most from these folks, is to look at their mistakes, look at their flaws and what they went through, and how they learned from it, and how they picked themselves up from, you know, these mistakes. And, you know, they weren't perfect. You know, in the book, I talk about it a lot. You know, I talk about a lot of things that these folks did or were accused of, and say, look, you got to know, like, what they were going. And a lot of these times, like, it's a reaction to what they were themselves faced, you know, the things that they were going through. But it doesn't, you know, you got to look at them as humans, as people. And they were also really young, too, at the time. They were just young folks who were just trying the best they could. And a lot of times, you know, they made mistakes. But we got to learn from their mistakes if we're going to, you know, continue forward.
I want to weave these two things together when we come forward in our remaining moments with Santi Elijah Holley, author of the book An Amerikan Family, the Shakurs and the Nation They Created. You heard him say a moment ago, they made mistakes. They were flawed. They had shortcomings. And yet they've had a huge impact on the struggle for racial justice, a huge impact on black liberation. And he argues again that their story is the story of America. Fascinating that one could endure all of that and yet have an impact on the state of black America. We'll ask him how that is possible when we come forward in our remaining moments with Santi Elijah Holley. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
Say the quiet part out loud. KBLA Talk 1580.
In our community, mental health struggles can sometimes go unnoticed. The suicide rate among black youth has risen faster than any other ethnic group. Only 1 in 3 African Americans who need mental health care receives it. African American women are only half as likely as their Caucasian counterparts to seek professional mental health services. Even those who guide us spiritually can sometimes face their own challenges. 45% of pastors say they've experienced depression or burnout to the extent they need to take a leave of absence from ministry. As people of faith, it's time to acknowledge it's okay not to be okay. You can pray and get help. Visit normalizehelp.org for more information and resources. Join us in raising mental health awareness in our community. Funded by the Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health and the Champion Counseling Center of Faithful Central Bible Church.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Tired of being locked out of job opportunities and shut down by systemic racism? KBLA stands with you in fighting for the rights of black workers, and we don't black down. The Los Angeles Black Workers Center is a dynamic alliance of workers, organized labor, community-based organizations, clergy, students, and scholars, working collectively to improve the position of the black working class. The LA Black Workers Center takes a comprehensive approach to addressing the black jobs crisis. Their programs promote access to quality jobs, racial equity in hiring and retention, discrimination-free job sites, and they prepare black workers for employment in high-wage, career-track jobs. The Black Workers Center supports workers who need help protecting their rights on the job. They give workers access to quality jobs and remove systemic barriers to employment. To sign up for free career readiness training, get involved in organizing around anti-discrimination, learn about union apprenticeship programs, or sign on to a trade registry, please visit www.lablackworkerscenter.org. That's lablackworkerscenter.org. Together, we can beat the black jobs crisis. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
JP Morgan Chase is building on the investments in California and around the country to help close the racial wealth gap and build a more equitable future. As part of JP Morgan Chase commitment, they are taking action to help improve financial wealth and access to banking in the black community, helping more people open low-cost checking and savings accounts, hosting community seminars with supporting black-led institutions by building awareness about financial investments, hiring community managers, and opening community center branches like Crenshaw, Inglewood, and downtown LA. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Get the tools to help reach your financial goals. Visit today, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity. Again, jpmorganchase.com/racial equity.
unpack a little bit more with Tavis Smiley. The conversation continues right now.
Our guest in this hour is and has been Santi Elijah Holley with his new book, An American Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created. As I mentioned earlier, in case you've just tuned in, it is a New York Times editor's pick, and the Los Angeles Times says it's magnificent, a unique, intimate history of black liberation. And I want to close with this, Santi. You talked earlier about the mistakes, the flaws, the shortcomings. These Shakurs, Assata and Tupac, most famous among them, have endured and overcome so much on their way to having an undeniable impact on the story of black liberation in this country. And I guess the question is, how is that possible? How do you deal with all that madness, all that drama, and still be regarded as having had an impact on black liberation as we know it?
I think maybe because because they were so present. I mean, what they did was they gave themselves wholly, completely. You know what I'm saying? Like when they did something, I mean, from Assata, Tupac, the Fame, Tulu, this whole family, when they did something that, there's no half stepping. They gave it their whole body and soul. And I think that transcends. That's why, years later, after many of these folks have passed away or, have not really been in the forefront so much, like we still have their words and their work because they were so sincere and they give of themselves so much and so, mind, body, and soul. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So like that's why that's their impact, because they were so dedicated and committed.
And to what extent, as you argue in the book, throughout the book, the purpose of the book, I suspect, is to get us to wrestle with the fact that the story of the Shakurs is the story of America. In 60 seconds, how so?
I mean, look, American history is all of our American history is full of our heroes who have risen up against, what was putting them down, repressing them. It's people who see the situation and see the repression and see the struggles, and they decide to make changes. They decide to organize and react against it, to respond against it, to try to better everybody, better their community, better their people, better the country. And so what's what the Shakurs did. They followed in this American heroic tradition of reacting, rebelling, rising up against the repressive systems around them. And that's why I feel like that's why they are American, with a K or with a C. That's what they did. They just try to make the world better for them and their people. And that's what America claims to want to do.
You might want to get this book now before Republicans start trying to ban it. It's called An American Family with a K, An American Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created. The author of that book has been our guest in this hour, and I've delighted immensely in this conversation with Santi Elijah Holley. Once again, An American Family, The Shakurs and the Nation They Created. Santi, congrats on a powerful text, man. Good to have you on. Thanks for your time.
I appreciate you, Tavis. Thanks.
He left there and she had the baby solo. She had it on the bathroom floor and didn't know, so she didn't know what to throw away and what to keep. She wrapped the baby up and threw him in the trash heap. I guess she thought she'd get away, wouldn't hear the cries. She didn't realize how much the little baby had her eyes. Now the baby's in the trash heap, bawling. Mama can't help her.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
We're glad you could join us. Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Moore. Now, here's the latest from the Black Information Network. New York City will be paying George Floyd protesters in a lawsuit settlement involving accusations of a winner. Or winners can choose between $1 billion in annuity payments or go for the lump sum payment of $516